From free agency moves to Rashee Rice's car wreck, the draft, preseason roster cutdowns, and key injuries, this video will cover the entire Chiefs 2024 offseason and keep every Chiefs fan in the know about how the roster got to where it's at today. So let's talk about it. But first, how about those? All right, this video has a lot of info packed in it. It's every major move that the Chiefs made from February to the start of the season. Kind of if you checked out during the offseason at any point, this is going to catch you up and get you really in the know of what's going on with the Chiefs roster, new players they added, their draft picks, players who were on the team last year that are no longer with the team this year. It's kind of a deep dive into all that, but we do move quickly. And without further ado, here we go. After the Super Bowl, the Chiefs had some decisions to make, as they do every year. Who stays, who goes? Well, one of the first things they did after winning the Super Bowl was actually letting punter Tommy Townsend, who is now with the Texans, walk in free agency, and instead they signed the punter, the punt god, Matt Araiza, to a cheap one-year deal. He won the starting punter job after mandatory minicamp, and he's the left-footed punter you'll see out there booming 60-plus yarders and place-holding for Harrison Butker on field goals. A week later, at the end of February, the team then released Marquez Valdes-Scantling, the veteran wideout, to save $12 million in cap space, and he's now catching passes from Josh Allen in Buffalo after signing a one-year deal with them this offseason. Next, KC opted to franchise tag cornerback L'Jarius Sneed and ended up trading him before the draft to the Tennessee Titans in exchange for a 2025 third-round pick and a swap of 2024 seventh-round picks. So yeah, I hated to see Sneed go, and honestly, the Chiefs are still looking for some answers at the cornerback position outside of Trent McDuffie, even now as they prepare for the season opener with L'Jarius Sneed gone. After tagging Sneed, though, the Chiefs signed defensive tackle Chris Jones to a massive 5-year extension that made him the highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL, a massive contract. Big numbers. So the Chiefs showed that Chris Jones was priority number one, as he was the first big contract that got done in the offseason. 2 days later, they then re-signed linebacker Drue Tranquill to a 3-year, $19 million deal, who was a free agent, bringing back a couple of key pieces. From there, they slowly but surely brought back more pieces of the defense in the lead up to the draft. They signed safety Deon Bush, who's now on the practice squad, defensive tackle Mike Pennel, defensive tackle Turk Wharton, Derek Nottie, safety/cornerback Nazeeh Johnson, as well as defensive end Mike Danna. Danna inked a 3-year, $24 million deal, which was a big.
What's up, guys? We're going to hop into the store. I've been hunting for this card everywhere. Hopefully I can find it. If not, my homies told me this thing.
Deal. He was the first ever Brett Veach draft pick, any pick since 2018, to re-sign to a long-term deal. They got more re-signed later this season, but more on that in a bit, because before the draft, KC also made several moves on the offensive side of the ball. The notable receiver addition was the speedy Marquise Hollywood Brown. He signed a one-year deal worth $7 million, and you bring in a guy that Andy Reid will be able to use all over the field, and he runs like a 4.27 40, another smaller-bodied guy, but a quick one nonetheless. And while he sadly suffered a sternoclavicular dislocation on the first play of the first preseason game, he's going to miss Thursday's matchup against the Ravens. Hollywood is looking more likely to play week 2 or week 3 at the latest. Still a great signing, just hopefully he can get out there on the field and stay healthy. Anyway, before the draft, the Chiefs also signed offensive lineman Mike Caliendo and quarterback Carson Wentz to be the backup quarterback for Patrick Mahomes. Caliendo, of course, is a backup lineman that filled in for Joe Thuney all offseason long as he was recovering from his pec injury. But the signing on Carson Wentz, it was a great one in my opinion, because he is probably one of the best backup QBs in the entire NFL. He was a potential MVP candidate the year he got injured. Talking about Wentz, the Chiefs roster, new players they added, their draft picks, players who were on the team sadly suffered. Big kicker here with the Rashee Rice situation is that he and his friends ended up fleeing the scene. They left, and that was definitely not a good look. It's a very long story, one that I've covered in multiple videos, but right now, Rice is facing multiple felony charges with a criminal and civil lawsuit ongoing. The civil case has a jury trial date of June 23rd, 2025, but it's the criminal case that the NFL will be watching closely. There currently isn't a date set for the criminal case, but depending on when results from that come out, Rice could potentially get suspended roughly 4 to 6 games. That's my best guess at this point in time. Sometime this season or next season, depending on how long the criminal case drags out. The NFL recently said they are continuing to keep eyes on the criminal case and see how it plays out, basically before making a verdict of their own. So Rice is good to start the season, but we'll see what happens later down the road. From there, the draft happened, and KC ended up drafting Xavier Worthy, the wideout out of Texas, in the first round, traded up to go and get him. Ironically, traded up with the Buffalo Bills. He's a smaller-bodied guy at 5'11" and 170 pounds, but he's a pretty good route runner, great at tracking the ball down the field, and also ran the fastest 40 time in NFL history, running a 4.21. So Brett Veach made sure to get speed infused back in the wide receiver room. You've got several that can run really fast. Hollywood Brown, 4.27. Mecole Hardman, they brought back later, spoiler alert, 4.33. Rice runs a 4.41. Justin Watson runs around a 4.4. Lots of speed back in this offense. Then their second round pick in the draft, if we get back to the draft, was offensive tackle Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU, and he did win the left tackle battle over second-year player Wanya Morris in training camp, and Kingsley will be the starting left tackle to start the season. He's the only new lineman along the O-line, with Joe Thuney just recently back and healthy at left guard. He tore his pec in the playoffs last year and spent most of the offseason recovering and healing up. He's now good to go. Then, of course, you still have Creed Humphrey at center, Trey Smith is right guard, and Jawan Taylor is the right tackle, and hopefully Jawan Taylor has a better year this year with less penalties. He looked much better at the end of last year than he did at the beginning. The Chiefs' next draft pick in the draft, if we get back to it, was tight end Jared Wiley in the fourth round out of TCU. He's a guy that led all FBS tight ends with 5 red zone touchdowns last year. He had a quiet preseason, but I am intrigued to see how he continues to develop, at least his rookie year. The Chiefs' next pick was arguably their steal of the draft, selecting one of the best, if not the best, safety in the entire draft class in the fourth round. That safety is Jaden Hicks out of Washington State. He's a guy that will play a lot of special teams right now, but will rotate in on defense as needed. And he is also going to be one of the next men up if injuries hit the room. He was the standout player to me on defense through the 3 preseason games and is looking to be a staple piece of the defense in future years, and maybe even this year if needed. Then the Chiefs went with an offensive lineman in the 5th for Penn State. He's a guy that's played all along the offensive line. Literally every spot on the O-line aside from left tackle, and he's shaping up to be the Swiss Army knife type depth piece along the line, kind of like Nick Allegretti used to be. The Chiefs then drafted cornerback Kamal Hadden out of Tennessee in the 6th round, and he's the only draft pick that didn't make the Chiefs' 53-man roster. In fact, the guy is now with the Green Bay Packers on their practice squad. The Chiefs' last draft pick, though, was offensive guard CJ Hansen out of Holy Cross. This is pretty crazy. Hansen is actually the first player from Holy Cross to be drafted since Rob McGovern in 1989, and ironically, it was the Chiefs that drafted McGovern back in 89. So yeah, that is wild indeed. Hansen still needs to develop a bit, but he boasts a relative athletic score of 9.84, and I know KC hopes to keep him around, especially when you have aging guards, or at least one guard on a contract rookie deal, and as of right now, he hasn't reached an extension with the team before the start of the season. So those were the Chiefs' 7 draft picks, with 6 of them still remaining on the active roster. Immediately following the draft, though, KC opted to take care of one of their best players in tight end Travis Kelce. They basically reworked the 2 years he had left on his contract, giving him a raise, and that made him the highest paid tight end in average per year and cash over the next 2 seasons, a well-deserved pay raise for tight end 1 in the entire NFL. A week or so after the draft, the Chiefs signed a bunch of undrafted free agents to help build out their 90-man roster, but the most notable signings were running back Amani Bailey, linebacker Swayze Bozeman, tight end Baylor Cupp, and defensive tackle Fabian Lovett Sr., who are all now on the Chiefs practice squad. Then, a couple UDFAs did make the Chiefs' 53-man roster, with those being cornerback Christian Roland Wallace and running back / fullback, the hybrid, Carson Steele. Carson Steele is probably the biggest offensive standout throughout preseason to me. So you had Jaden Hicks on defense, Carson Steele on offense. And even though he's technically listed on the roster as a fullback, he will be used in more of a hybrid role. Roughly a month later, just before mandatory minicamp, the Chiefs signed veteran wideout Mecole Hardman to a vet min deal, and he's currently looking to be the team's starting punt returner, possibly one of their 2 main kick returners, and will also be used here and there on offense, especially with Hollywood Brown still out and injured. Shortly after that, defensive end